All right, let's get this out while I still can. Was the real Jesus Christ so unjust that he was going to punish these Jews from the murder of Abel if they were not descendants of Cain? Of course not. Listen, not all Jews are Talmudic Jews. We're not talking about the Torah reading people. We're not talking about the real Jewish people, but those who pretend to be Jewish and who are the descendants of Cain. Okay? There is a clear distinction. I don't want you to start I don't want you to start not liking the Jewish people. I want you to know that there is a big difference between I'll continue to read, you will understand, okay? So, was the real Christ so unjust that he was going to punish these particular Jewish for the murder of Abel if they were not descendants of Cain? Of course not. Christ was tracing the children of the serpent, the enchanter Satan, down through the centuries, including all the prophets, right down the line. So Christ said, upon this race, these descendants of the serpent, will come the responsibility for all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel even unto the blood of Zacharias. Acts chapter 13, 8-9 says, this tells about a Jew sorcerer, Elymas, who opposed Paul when Paul was trying to make some converts. Then Saul, who was also called Paul, filled with the Holy Ghost or the Great Spirit, we're talking about the same, set his eyes on him and said, all full of sublimity and mischief, thou son of the devil. The same Greek word, qyiz, meaning son, thou enemy of all righteousness, wilt thou not cease to pervert the right ways of the Lord? John 6, 70-71 records, Jesus answered them, have not I chosen you 12, and one of you is a devil? He spoke of Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon, for he was that would betray him, being one of the 12. Our Savior was not just being vulgarly abusive by calling people names. He never did that. He denounced these Pharisees. He called them hypocrites, and they were. Jesus Christ wasn't abusing them with lying epithets. They were hypocrites, and he was accurate. Now, concerning the name of God, let's say, because the name does not really matter. What matters is we know who we are referring to. So if I say the creator of the universe, because there are people that are paying so much attention to the name that they are not aware that there are many languages, and that so the creator of the universe should be very clear that we're talking about, our creator. And I tend to call Christ Jesus Christ because that's the way people will understand it better. It can be called Yeshua, So, but for the sake of understanding, I might, because I want this to be understood by everybody, and that's why, I think that those people who are quarreling over, Yahushua, there are even some people who are calling him Yahushua, whatever, Christ, Yeshua or Jesus Christ, we know what we're talking about, for those who want to understand anyways. So back to what I was saying. So Jesus Christ was not abusing them with lying epithets. They were hypocrites and he was accurate. When Christ called these Jews children of serpents, they acknowledged the statement was true, for that was the emblem they had used from ancient times. When he said that one of them was a devil, he wasn't being abusive, he was speaking the literal truth. The first epistle of John again states the existence of these two seed lines. 1 John 2:29 tells us, "If ye know that he is righteous, ye know that everyone that does righteousness is born of him." 1 John 3:2 continues, "Beloved, now are we the sons of God." Here we have the Greek word teknon, meaning a born child, not adopted. Thus, a child born of Yahweh. Yahweh, I'm not sure, because the creator of the universe. Okay? Let's continue with 1 John 5:9-10. "Whosoever is born of God does not commit sin, but his seed remaineth in him, and he cannot sin because he is born of God." By this, John didn't mean that none of us commit any sins at all. If that were the case, we wouldn't have needed the sacrifice of Christ on the cross. We all have our sins, but people are divided into two classes. There are the ones who are really sorry because they don't get a chance to sin more, and the others who are sorry because they have sinned only a little. What John means is, whosoever is born of the Creator does not habitually sin. So John says in 1 John 3:10, "In this the children teknon of God are manifest, and the children teknon of the devil." Remember, John has talked about us as the born teknon of Yahweh, and the others as the born teknon of the devil. 1 John 3:12 records that as for those that are our brothers, not the children of Satan, we should love them and not be as Cain. The King James Bible says, "Who was of that wicked one and slew his brother." The people that have churchianity rather than Christianity say, "Oh well, it doesn't say that he was a son, it just means that Cain was morally associated with Satan and he was bad and a reprobate," and so on. Some people would read Luke 3:23-24 as follows. The son of Joseph, who was as big a reprobate as Eli, who was morally not better than Matthew, who was as bad as Levi. Is this the way some people think Luke wrote this? If this is not the meaning of the Greek here in Luke, it is not the meaning of the same Greek phrase in John 3:12. So where it says, not as Cain, who was of that wicked one, in Greek it means he was the son of that wicked one. In Greek, if you say John was of William, in English it would read John was the son of William. The better English translations recognize this. For example, in the Weymouth translation, this same verse, John 3:12, reads, "We're not to resemble Cain, who was a child of the evil one and killed his brother." Phillips' translation reads, "We are none of us to have the spirit of Cain, who was the son of the devil and murdered his brother." The New English Bible, a magnificent job of translation, reads, "Unlike Cain, who was a child of the devil." Okay, I restart. Unlike Cain, who was a child of the evil one and murdered his brother. The verses that people use as proof positive there isn't any basis for the belief that the Jews are of the descendants of Cain, and therefore from the devil is John 8:31-33. Christ was talking to the Judeans, who were the people we know of as Jews today. It isn't simply that Christ was behaving like a petulant, spoiled child because somebody didn't believe in him, because it says those Judeans who believed in him. Check Strong's Concordance. The word Jew is mistranslated from the word meaning Judean. Yes, so-called converted children of the devil. Christ said to those Judean Jews, "If ye continue in my doctrines indeed, then ye shall be my disciples, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." They answered him, "We be Abraham's seed, and we were never in bondage to any man." Anybody that knows their Bible knows that all of Abraham's children had been in bondage at one time or another. There is evidence that these people were not descendants of Abraham. Who is it who could say he was descended from Abraham and had never been in bondage to any man? If these Jews were of any of the 12 tribes of Israel at all, they would have been in bondage the first time in Egypt. If they belonged to the 10 tribe northerly kingdom of Israel, they would have been in bondage the second time in Assyria. If they belonged to the 2 tribed southern kingdom of Judah, they would have been in bondage the second time in Babylon. Yet the Jews admitted they had never been in bondage to any man, thus demonstrating they were not of Israel nor Judah. Who could say that 1,800 years earlier that Abraham was one of his ancestors, Esau? Remember, Esau and Jacob were twin brothers born with presumably the same bloodline. However, Esau married 2 Canaanite women in violation of the Creator's law. When the Bible records Esau selling his birthright to Jacob for a bowl of lentil stew. This isn't when he lost his birthright. This was only a formal ceremony by which he gave up any claim to it. Esau lost the birthright when he did the thing that rendered it impossible for him to continue as the head of the clan. Recognizing he was already out of the line for leadership, Esau sold his inheritance for a bowl of stew. The Bible records that Esau and his two Canaanite wives moved down to Mount Seir, a very rugged mountain range southeast of the Dead Sea. Mount Seir is exactly where some of these people lived who were descendants of the fallen angels. Read Genesis chapter 6. Among the people who had the bloodline of the fallen angels were these Horites. They were the cave dwellers who were known as Horim. Those Jews talking with Christ had identified themselves as Edomite Jews. Genesis 36:20-30 lists Esau's descendants. Listed are all the various chieftains among the family of Seir, the Horite satanic line, including his daughter Timnah. Genesis 36:12 records that Timnah was a concubine to Esau's son Eliphaz and bore him a son Amalek. What a pestilential lot of the whole tribe of Amalek was. They all behaved according to their satanic bloodline. You will find a good deal about this in Exodus 17:8-16 and Numbers 20:14-21. The same satanic conduct on the part of the Edomites was repeated as the opportunity arose. Remember, when the people of Israel came out of Egypt in the Exodus, they wanted to march up to Palestine. They were then attacked by the Edomites. The Israelites were driven back, so they had to detour around The Israelites were driven back, so they had to detour around down through the wilderness in the Sinai Peninsula. When the Babylonians under Nebuchadnezzar captured Jerusalem, they looted and buried the city and massacred a lot of the inhabitants. Then the Edomites came rushing in to help in the massacre and plunder. The whole book of Obadiah is just one continuous condemnation of the Edomites for the way they acted. This book also predicted their eventual slaughter and punishment for what they did. Obadiah verse 10 records, "For thy violence against thy brother Jacob shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt cut off forever." Obadiah verse 15 continues, "For the day of Yahweh is near you upon all the heathen. As thou hast done, it shall be done unto thee. Thy reward shall return upon thine own head." Obadiah verse 18, "And the house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame, and the house of Esau for stubble. And they shall kindle in them and devour them, for there shall not be any remaining of the house of Esau, for Yahweh has spoken it." Exodus 17:14-16 continues. "And Yahweh said unto Moses, Write this for a memorial in a book, and rehearse it in the ears of Joshua, for it will utterly put out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. And Moses built an altar and called it the name of it Yahweh Nissi, Yahweh our banner. For he said, because Yahweh had sworn that Yahweh would have war with Amalek from generation to generation. How did these satanic Edomite Jews get up there into Judea? They came in two principal ways. During the time of southern kingdom of Judah was practically empty during the Babylonian captivity, the Edomites were driven out of Mount Seir with a heavy invasion by the Arab people, the Nabateans from the east. So the Edomites were driven westward. They couldn't go southwest or straight west. They would then be getting into Egyptian territory and were not strong enough to fight the Egyptians. Consequently, they went slightly northwest and took over the southerly half of what had been the kingdom of Judah and settled there. When the small remnant of Judah came back from the Babylonian captivity, the books of Ezra and Nehemiah record that 42,600 or something like that came back. It lists them by their families, and when you run those down, you find that slightly over 8,000 of these people were not from any tribe of Israel or Judah. Only 34,000 of the 42,000 that came back were Israelites of the tribes of Judah, Benjamin, and a few Levites among them. Since there were too few to drive out these numerous and warlike Edomites, all they could do was settle in the little territory left vacant. To give you an idea of the size of this territory, the entire area of the 12-tribe nation of Israel before it broke up, picture it as follows. If it were set down here in Southern California, it would extend from the Mexican border to the southern port of Los Angeles and inland from the coast. It was never more than 40 miles wide. Now divide this into thirds. The northern two-thirds of that comprise the kingdom of Israel, the 10-tribe northern kingdom. Only the southerly one-third of that was the kingdom of Judah. Of that one-third, take out the southern half of that now occupied by the Edomites. This little strip of land is all that remained for the true Judahites and Benjaminites to settle in. Before the captivity, the tribe of Judah had been in the south, the tribe of Benjamin in the north, with the city of Jerusalem lying right on the boundary line between them. They sorted themselves out as well as they could, the way they were before. Judah was in the south and Benjamin pushed to the north. However, Benjamin couldn't just move up to the north a little bit because north of them was Samaria. Remember, I said you divide this 12-tribe territory into thirds. The middle third constituted Samaria. Isaiah, Kings, and Chronicles record that when the Assyrians captured the northern kingdom of Israel and deported its entire people, they brought other people from Assyria and settled them in Samaria. It purposely failed to say the Assyrians settled anybody in Galilee, the northernmost portions, because they did not. They left it vacant. Now the Judahites pushed the Benjaminites to the north as they returned from the captivity. They couldn't just move up into Samaria. that was fully settled. So Benjamin had to leapfrog over Samaria to the vacant land of Galilee to the north. In Galilee was Christ's own hometown of Nazareth. He was born in Bethlehem, down close to Jerusalem, but his family home was up in Nazareth. Remember, Christ got almost all of his converts up in Galilee, and of the 12 disciples, only Judas was a Jew. In Bible translations, Judah is called Judas Iscariot. There is no such word as Iscariot in any language known to man. This is a corruption of the Hebrew word Ish Kerioth, meaning a man of Kerioth. Kerioth was a little village in the southwestern portion of Judea, down in the territory occupied by the Edomites. Judas was an Edomite Jew and the only Jew of the 12 disciples. The other 11 were all Galileans, therefore Benjaminites. If a Jew could walk with Christ for 3 years and still betray him, is there any Jew we can trust? When Jesus Christ was arrested and taken into the high priest's home for illegal questioning, Peter followed him. The servant said, "Well, you're one of them. You're a Galilean. Your accent shows it. You certainly don't have any trouble telling the Southerners from a Northern Yankee here in this country, do you? They speak English with a different accent, and the Galileans spoke the Aramaic of the day with a little different accent from the Judeans down around Jerusalem. When the people were gathered at Pentecost, and the Holy Spirit came unto the disciples, they were all there except Judas Iscariot. The disciples began speaking to this assembled multitude in a multitude of different languages. How astonished the people were when they heard the disciples speaking in all those different languages, which obviously they did not know. The people said, Aren't these Galileans? All the remaining disciples were. Down to the south of what is left of the territory of Judah, these Edomite Jews settled. They were always a pestiferous people and were constantly raiding the southern boundary of Judea. Their descendants are raiding the Arabs' territory the same way today. A leopard doesn't change its spots. For a long time after the return from the Babylonian captivity, the people in Judea were a conquered province of the empire, or another Syria, Egypt, and finally Rome. They got their little flare-up of independence under the Maccabee kings beginning about 150 BC and about 120 BC. John Hyrcanus, one of the Maccabee kings, who had by that time a good disciplined army, got tired of these Edomite Jew raids on his southern border. So Hyrcanus marched down south and defeated these Jews thoroughly. Saul, the first king of Israel, had been told by Yahweh, "You go down there and absolutely exterminate these Edomites. Don't you leave one of them alive." Saul made a big mistake, as it is always a mistake to disobey Yahweh's commands and instructions. He did not exterminate those loathsome people. When Saul came back, the prophet Samuel said, "Because you have disobeyed God, God has deposed you from being king, and he's going to put a better man in your place. Approximately 900 years later, John Hyrcanus made the same mistake. After he had defeated the Edomites, he then decided he was going to be a missionary. He would convert them to the religion of Judaism. He offered the Edomites a choice. He would spare them if they would accept the religion of Judaism. This was not the religion of the Old Testament ever. It was what was brought back from Babylon with the Babylonian Talmud. The late Rabbi Stephen S. Wise said it briefly and accurately. I have never been able to improve his own words. The learned rabbi said, the return from Babylon and the introduction of the Babylonian Talmud marked the end of Hebrewism and the beginning of Judaism. The people of the Old Testament were real Hebrews, and the religion Yahweh had given them could well be called Hebrewism. This Talmud Judaism began as the Jews destroyed the religion of the Old Testament. In Yeshua's time, they had not yet given it the name of the Talmud. They called it the tradition of the elders. Remember how often Jesus Christ rebuked them for following their tradition. Why have ye by your tradition set aside the laws of Yahweh? Jesus Christ was referring to the Talmud. So, John Hyrcanus was going to be the Billy Graham of his day. He was going to make converts. Hyrcanus told them, if you will adopt the religion of Judaism, I will give you full citizenship in the kingdom of Judea. If you don't, I will cut your throat. As you well know, this is the most effective missionary technique that has ever been developed. Even Billy Graham doesn't make converts that fast. Naturally, the converts made by the sword are of doubtful validity. So the Edomites adopted the religion of Judaism and were accepted in full citizenship in the kingdom. You will find this described in great detail in this one reliable history of that period, Josephus in his history, Antiquities of the Jews, Book 13, Chapter 9. The second wave of Edomites came in when the Edomite chieftain Herod conquered and became king of Judea under the Roman Empire. Herod was a very able and very evil scoundrel. He raised a large sum of money by taxation and by raiding his neighbors. With this money he bribed Mark Antony, who was over in Egypt with the Roman legions at this time, to lend him a couple of the Roman legions to add to his own Edomite troops for the conquest of Judea. With the Roman troops and his own, with the Roman troops and his own, Herod did capture Judea. In 40 BC, the Romans recognized Herod as governor with the title Ethnarch. In 37 BC, Rome formally recognized Herod as the local king of Judea. He was still subject to Roman foreign policy, but he had complete self-government at home. Herod had come in with a conquering army, and his Jewish Edomite followers came in with him for the sake of the plunder they could get. They overran the area. They have also gone back to Germany for the same reason. You can learn much about these events in Josephus' Antiquities of the Jews, book 14 to 18. Books 14 to 18. In this story, the Wars of the Jews, book 4, chapters 4 to 5, book 5, and chapter 6, and thereafter, Josephus writes of the horrible conduct of these Edomite Jews within the besieged city of Jerusalem, while it was undergoing siege by Titus in the year 70 AD. Their robbery and massacre of the inhabitants inflicted probably more casualties than the Roman army did. In the Jewish Encyclopedia, the article Edom, in the edition I used to look it up, it was volume 5, page 41. The article Edom includes with these words, the Edomites are found today in modern Jewry. These Edomites had come from in the first time when John Hyrcanus gave them full citizenship. The second time they came in was as a wave of conquerors under Herod. This is the same Herod that tried to murder Jesus Christ as a baby. They had overrun the land. They had control of the entire civil and religious government until the death of Herod. By will, Herod left the kingdom of Judea to his son Herod Archelaus. The Romans were too wise to trust somebody with the kingdom when they didn't know anything about him. The Romans gave the new Herod a trial period as governor under the title Ethnarch. For 10 years he gave the country the most miserable misrule that any nation ever had. The people finally petitioned Rome to send a Roman to govern them. The people didn't like the tyranny of Rome at all, but conditions were so bad, anything was better than what they had. When a Roman would rather govern the people, you can understand how bad the situation was. The Romans put Herod Archelaus on trial, found him guilty of misrule, and banished him to Vienna. From that time on, there were a series of Roman governors called procurators. Pontius Pilate was number 6 in the series. The military government was entirely in the hands of the Roman procurators. They were also in full charge of the tax collections for Rome. On the other hand, those Herodian Jews had control of the entire religious government and the people. They also had control of the civil government in all respects concerning purely local self-government, could collect their own taxes and so on. When the priests were getting greatly upset about Christ's teachings, they said, "If we let him alone, all men will believe on him. The Romans will take this kingdom away from us, the way the clergymen have taught it. This is meaningless stupidity." The clergy pictured Christ as a whining, cringing milksop going around whimpering to people they ought to be good. If this was all Jesus Christ did, these Jews would not have bothered with contempt for him, much less worry about his teachings. Jesus Christ was explaining to the people the utter evil of the Jewish economic and religious system under which they were living. Let's paraphrase what the Jews might have said based on what is recorded in the Bible. Look, if we let him alone, he is going to awaken the people to these controls we have over them. They will petition Rome, just as they did about Archelaus, and the Romans will kick us out of here. We will lose control of the money and might have to pay fair wages. The people might rebel against the usury we charge them for use of their own money. This is what they were talking about. Here were these Edomite Jews who told Jesus Christ they were descendants of Abraham. However, they revealed they really couldn't be true Israel when they said they had never been in captivity to any man. They might have had some Israelite ancestors, but no alien blood was allowed in those called Israel. As we read in John 8:31-44, we will come to the place where Jesus Christ tells these Jews they were the children of the devil. They would do the lusts of their father, who was a murderer from the beginning. Jesus Christ recognized those two seed lines. He didn't say these Jews had only adopted some of the bad principles of the devil. He said they were the children of the devil. The Old Testament as well as the New Testament recognizes the two seed lines. The Adamic seed line, Yahweh's children, came down through a carefully selected best one in each generation from Abraham, Isaac, Israel, then on down through the 12 tribes of Israel. So there are the two seed lines, that of Yahweh's children through Israel and the children of Satan, some of the most pestiferous of which have come through the line of Cain. People have asked me if I thought the Jews knew of their descent from Cain. They certainly do, and here is how they prove they know. The Bible records Cain saying he was being driven out of the land where the descendants of Edom would be. He complained that wherever he went, whomever he met would kill him. In those days there were a lot of places that were not too hospitable to strangers. If, as the preachers teach, Edom and Eve were the parents of the only people on earth, who were these other people? The only other child of Adam and Eve at that time was Abel, and he was dead. With Cain driven away from Adam and Eve out into some other part of the earth, who was Cain going to meet that would kill him? Remember, the Bible records Cain very speedily found enough people that with them he bowed the city. The Bible records these pre-Edomite people. Yahweh told Cain he would put a mark on him so the people would recognize him and not kill him. Just what was this mark? Did Yahweh tattoo something on the sole of Cain's foot, or where Cain would sit down on it? No, long before any hidden mark could possibly be seen, Cain would have been killed. Yahweh had to put this mark where it was the first thing others would see. He put it in the exact geometrical center of Cain's face. The ancient kings were extremely vain of the conquests they have made. The Pharaoh of Egypt, kings of Babylon, Assyria, and Persia all left elaborately carved monuments telling how They had captured this city or that. They recorded the massacre of so many of its inhabitants and made slaves of the others, plus how much loot they took and so forth. In addition to the inscriptions, there was almost always a carved panel illustrating this, showing some of the captives. Wherever any of these panels showed an Israelite, it is invariably a straight nose, typical of what we would call an Anglo-Saxon, Scandinavian, or Teutonic type of face. Where it shows these Canaanite people, it is always a typical hook nose. The evidence of the Bible and the evidence of archaeology all shows one thing. There is definitively two different seed lines. The satanic seed line and the other seed line of Israel, Yahweh's own children. Thanks for listening.